in every function and allocate a portion of or all of those roles to the RPO that's selected, and they build their teams based on the particular kinds of roles that the client wants to outsource to them. So if I gave you a specific example, as many in the R&D function or in the commercial functions or in the corporate functions, roles that any of the organizations that I worked with or have experience in or that I received contracts from when I worked in RPOs could be filled by our organization. What we did was we delineated which of those roles the client wanted us to be responsible for. And then we just made sure that we had the team members that could actually execute against those particular roles. It's fairly complex when you start talking about this.
Yeah.
So many companies have salary bands or job families or job levels that they then discuss with an RPO in great length to be sure that the teams that are built, the recruiting teams that are built, are actually have the capability and the resources for sourcing to fulfill the need that the business has in the immediate sense, and also any peak or project demand initiatives that the client would have.
Okay, so I guess just to follow, in your experience, the contracts you've seen in pharma and medtech, what's the sort of lower bound of the proportion of total has that go through an RPO and the sort of upper bound in contracts you've seen?
The lower bound, are you looking for specific numbers? Because my head starts to swim when we...
I mean, a ballpark percentage of total has, what proportion of a firm's total has might have gone through them?
In the lower bounds, 25%, and the higher bounds, 100%.
Okay, wow.
And across these two industries, do you see there is still a significant white space for RPO providers to further increase that penetration on average?
Yes.
And what do you think is driving? I mean, okay, so one is clearly there is some white space, but do you think that white space will be filled given the capabilities of RPO firms and given the outsourcing maybe strategy or a propensity of customers?
That's a great question, and I think that there will always be white space because I think that both the client and the RPO provider suffer to learn to speak the same language. We say to each other, I need for you to fill 100 roles, and this is the role profile, and we speak about those things all being standardized. I think everyone knows that even though you have a standard role profile, that profile is not always the desired for the hiring manager, right? So I think that the business, the client side will always react and say, gosh, you're not meeting all of my need or demand. I want to have a secondary opportunity to get those things filled so I feel security if I have my own team in place. And as conversely, the RPO says, let us build the team that you need, because when you have specific or unique changes to your role profile, we can address that. And then when you don't need that, you don't own that resource, so you're not hitting it with your payroll. It really depends on the sophistication and the depth and breadth of a true partnership as opposed to a vendor relationship. Because a true partnership can walk in from an RPO perspective and determine where there are breakdowns and feed an HR organization intelligence that lets them recalibrate and get what they need. Ones that want to blame and or that don't control the role profiles, etc., just can't seem to wrap their arms around it. So it becomes a really interesting dynamic between client and RPO provider, and it shifts back into a vendor relationship rather than a partnership. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. But is the RPO industry, or at least the major players, are they responding to this need of, the fact that customers need increasingly partners who would understand their needs that would lead to higher penetration?
I think a few of them are, honestly, and the majority of them do not. I would say the vast majority, if we're speaking globally about firms that provide either on a local or a regional level, the way that they staff themselves leads to a diminished capability. They're not training more senior people because they're looking at tight margins and profit structures